Welcome to European Forum Outback. I'm Klaudia Czerwińska and you're watching TVP World. It is my absolute pleasure to welcome my next guest to our beautiful open-air studio here in the Austrian Alps, Professor Philip Meissner, founded at ESCP, European Center for Digital Competitiveness. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you for inviting me.
And so the big subject of today for us is going to be the use of AI and AI in Europe. You said that you were happy to talk about the AI in government and other opportunities that this new technology that is very rapidly developing itself provides. But as we talk about the AI, there seems to be a lot of confusion. There seems to be also some sort of a uncertainty when it comes to the direction the AI is going to take. What would be the positive sides of AI, and why is it important that we actually put the effort to make it happen here in Europe and develop it further?
Yeah, so I think when we look at the discussion around AI, as you correctly stated, it's largely driven by fear and by the potential risks. Yeah? So we also have the AI Act now in place to mitigate the risks basically that originate from the technology. I feel we talk too little about the opportunities, because it is really a technology that is massively going to change the way that we live, that we operate, and that we can also create societal wealth. So when you look at some studies, they show that actually there have been only 3 technologies so far that have really had a significant positive impact on productivity growth. That was the internet, that was the personal computer, and it's AI. So the opportunities for growth that we get from this technology are really tremendous.
So as we're looking at the positives, we also have to mention some negatives. From your perspective, a professional that works with AI on daily basis, what would you say those are? The ones that would concern you as a professional?
So I think where we already see the negative effects quite drastically is when it comes to fakes, AI fakes, when it comes to social media,
So disinformation.
Disinformation, exactly. So I think this is something that we already see quite clearly. And it's a technology, ultimately it's a tool, like a knife, you can use a knife for a positive, you can cook, or you can murder somebody with a knife. And I think the same is also true with AI. So it has, if it's in the hand of a bad actor, it can be used in very negative ways to develop weapons, to create misinformation, to use for cyber attacks, all of these things. But there are also the positive effects. It can be used to make our governments more efficient, make our companies grow faster, our companies more profitable, create more wealth for our society as a whole. And I think we really need to look at both of these pictures and both of these angles in order to really also have a more maybe positive discussion about the topic, especially in Europe.
I mean, when we look at anything and everything, literally, there are pros and cons to AI as well. But you mentioned that it could be used by bad actors. How do you think places such as the European Union, how would the member states have to protect themselves, and how do they develop a technology that not only helps us as a civil society and the government, but also protects itself from being taken by foreign agents?
Yeah, so as I already mentioned, the AI Act, I think, is exactly, the idea behind the AI Act is to create trust in AI, by mitigating or regulating the risks. I think this is a very, very big step. And it's quite unique also when you look at it worldwide. The US and China have taken very different approaches. They have put the development first, and I think regulation second. Europe has, again, put regulation first and then development second. And we will see what kind of results this will yield. Yeah? So.
But do you think that this European approach to look at the rules, which I'm not criticizing, it's an interesting approach and it's a very desirable approach to have. Do you think that this is going to push Europe back when it comes to the development of AI? Because instead of focusing on just developing it and then thinking about the legislation, we here in Europe are going to focus on legislation first?
I mean, this is what we've seen in the past. And so far, when you look at 50% of the data centers are in the US, I think only 5% in Europe. And when you look
it's in Germany, isn't it?
I'm not quite sure where they are based, but it's, compared to China and the US, it's quite low. Mm-hmm. And also when you look at the investments, they are much larger in China and the US compared to Europe. When you look at the companies, the models, everything, or let's say a lot, is happening in China and the US right now. Europe is third, which is still a good place, but the gap between Europe and the US and China is quite big. So I think the risk that we have is that, like we've seen in prior technologies, that we regulate first and then we don't put a similar amount of attention to developing the technology, developing the market, developing the businesses in Europe. And coming back to your initial question about, is Europe doing enough? I think ultimately, it will also be determined by how much AI we have in Europe, by how many AI companies, how many AI players we have in Europe that actually have a significant share and also are able to deliver European AI in order to also secure ourselves from these threats. Because when we think about cybersecurity, I'm not an expert on cybersecurity, but I had a podcast recording with one a couple of months ago, and he basically said that AI is a tool that will be used by offense and by defense. Yeah, so both.
So whomever is going to have better AI is going to be the one winning.
Or at least going to have an advantage.
An increasing complexity of cyberspace was actually a major topic of discussion at the annual meeting 2025 in Davos in Switzerland. How do you think that Europe is adapting to this vast dynamic sector, and what are we supposed to do as of now to not fall behind those players such as the US and China?
So I think we need to step up our game in the tech space in general and in AI in particular, because when you see that the investments that go into this technology, what I already mentioned, I think Europe is falling behind. I think the regulatory frameworks they don't necessarily encourage founders to start something in Europe, and I think it's also internationally like very bad signaling to say, okay. There's this old saying, it's invented in the US, it's built in China, and it's regulated in Europe. And I think no matter where you go in the world, everybody knows this. And so I think we need to break free from this and also show that Europe can actually build meaningful companies. And I'm not saying that there is no progress in Europe. We have very excellent players. We have excellent players in the defense space, for example, that use AI a lot. When you look at Helsing, for example, in Germany, we have Mistral in France. So there are many companies from Europe that actually use AI quite well. But I think when you look at what's happening in the US, it's just at a different scale. And also I think the awareness for the opportunities of this technology are much more pronounced in the US, and this leads to much more drastic actions, both in terms of, I think, the importance of the technology for national security. I think in the US you have a lot of discussions around whoever wins the AI race will have a significant edge in national security, especially vis-a-vis China. I think this is a discussion that is being had in the US quite a bit. And the other thing is the economic opportunity that comes from this. And you see that all the tech companies invest massive amounts of money in this. And they are also now tackling the energy challenge that comes with it. I mean,
obviously we think about AI as a piece of technology, a tool, but there has to be an energy factor going behind it, because you have to power the data centers.
Yes, exactly. And this is something that I find quite remarkable, that now the tech companies in the US are thinking about how many nuclear power plants they need to power their data centers. And I think this is also a discussion that we need to have in Europe very soon. If we want to play a role in the tech game and in the AI game, we also need to think about how can we upgrade our energy infrastructure, our energy generation very quickly.
Especially now.
Yes.
Especially now with everything that's been happening over the past few years in terms of prices of energy in Europe as well.
Correct.
So from your perspective, because I know that you are also in charge of Digital Report 2024 by the European Center for Digital Competitiveness. This is something that I know you've mentioned before. What are some of the digital rises in Europe, and who is lagging behind when we're looking at our continent?
So when we did this study, the clear digital riser was France. And they have really made a lot of progress under Macron's leadership in digital.
Why do you think that is, that they made that progress? What made them stand out?
So I think, for President Macron, it was really a priority. And you could see they have launched many initiatives around technology, around startups. There's Station F in Paris that was launched. There's French Tech, the new initiative that was launched. And it's basically, he personally takes charge of it. And I think he communicated quite nicely, not only inside the government, but inside the entire country and also worldwide, that it's a priority. and basically investments and initiatives aligned around this. So I think France is really definitely one of the digital risers, but we also have other digital champions in Europe. So we have, when you look into Eastern Europe, we have Estonia quite famously. Ukraine is also a digital champion very much. When you look at what's happening in the defense sector, what's happening in the GovTech sector, they are really a champion in this domain. But also when you look into the Scandinavian countries in Northern Europe, many of them are really advanced when it comes to the use of digital technologies in government and beyond. So I think there are many good use cases that we can look into, many role models that others, including Germany, can try to aspire to.
A lot of conversations here at the forum also revolved about the future of Europe in the context of a potential spillover of the war in Ukraine. And obviously there is a lot of spending being put by the European Union. There is a push for 5% of GDP in NATO countries by 2035. Do you think that part of the money that is being put into defense sector should be definitely focusing on the development of AI in that direction in order to provide the European continent with more security from foreign actors?
Yes, 100%. And I think one of the things that is notable about the AI Act, although I'm not a big fan of the AI Act, they excluded defense in this piece of legislation. So I think there's a lot of opportunity actually in using AI in defense, and a sandbox actually also to play a little bit with the opportunities of AI in defense. And I think what we really need to think about when it comes to how we use these massive amounts of money that we now invest into defense for a good reason, I think we also need to acknowledge that the nature of war is changing. Yeah, so when you look,
definitely, the warfare from 20 years back is not what warfare is today.
Correct. So I think we really need to look into how much of this money can we invest into new technologies, including drones, including AI, including cyber, all these different things that now emerge. But I think this is also taken very seriously right now.
As my final question, as our time unfortunately here is coming to an end, I wanted to ask you about the social factor, because we speak about technology, we speak about defense, the government, about all these big places and big people who are making these decisions. What about the civil society? How do we introduce civil society to the goods and the evils of the AI so they have a full spectrum of knowledge to be able to make their own decisions as to whether or not they want to use AI and whether or not they would like their governments to implement it?
Yeah, so I think in many places actually the technology takes care of it itself. So I think many people are just using ChatGPT, for example, many every day. So I think there are those people who are already adopting the technology. I think the younger people adopt it anyway. When I look at my students, they love the technology. Yeah. So, but I think more broadly, I think we need to communicate more also in the media about this technology, and this is why I also love that you put this on the program, because people need to think about the opportunities that this have in my perspective, for their lives, and also for the future of the continent as a whole, because the big challenge that we also face, apart from the security perspective, is demographics. Europe is in aging continent. Many people are retiring.
The access to technology is different in that age group.
That's true, but also we have a very small percentage of young people compared to the old people, and we need to find ways to pay for our social welfare systems and for the retirement system.
And integrate both groups at the same time.
That's true. And so the question for me is, where can this productivity come from that we need? Where can the growth come from that we need in order to sustain the quality of life that we have today? And when we have less people working, we need to find other ways to be more productive. And I think AI, artificial intelligence, is actually one of the ways that we can make the workforce that we have more productive, to grow more and to create, as I said before, also more societal wealth. And for the, as you correctly said, maybe the groups that haven't adopted the technology yet, we need to make offers, and show them the opportunity of this technology, how it can improve their daily lives, but also maybe how it can improve the lives of our society as a whole. Because when they see the benefits, I think they will be much more open to the adoption.
Definitely a lot more questions that we have answers, but there is such a great potential when it comes to AI. Thank you so much, Professor.
Thank you.
This was Professor Philip Meissner, the founder of ESCP, European Center for Digital Competitiveness, was my guest. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And so thank you all for joining me here today. I'm Klaudia Czerwińska, and please do stay tuned here on TVP World for more.